When you start, you think it will never end. But believe it or not, the day when you finish learning the 2200 common use kanji does indeed come at some point if you're consistent. What's even more unbelievable is that a year after you've learned the kanji can also be gone, just like in my case. Stay tuned to see what has been my experience after 1 year since I stopped learning new kanji. Kalobra de gozaimasu, it's Closu back. Now, before I talk to you about my experience during this year, I think it's significant to tell you how I actually learned the kanji. Like many Japanese students, I first learned kanji the traditional way, which is repeating 100 times one kanji and then believing that you have learned it. And as many of you can testify, you know this kanji for the first 10 days and then you forget it. I learned over 500 kanji with a traditional method, and after stopping to learn Japanese for a while, I could remember about 100. So it was kind of a shame that so much effort was put into learning kanji and then forgetting them. Then I came searching through the internet to the methods which constitute the kanji triphers, which I have explained in a previous video. And so I started learning kanji the Heisig way. This is with Nemo techniques, and I got hooked. I loved it. It was such a revelation to me and such a great enjoyment learning kanji, learning all those scribbles and chicken scratches in a way that actually was fun. I got so hooked into it that I actually slowed down my pace. My goal was to finish as quickly as possible, and instead I started thinking, how could I improve this story, or can I come up with a better story? And I did so with like 70% of the kanji, What did this mean was that it took me a while to finish RTK1. It took me 2.5 years to be precise. And it was a blast. I loved it. Although I must admit that I did get kind of addicted, and it kind of became an obsession to me. I wanted to for me it was kind of a sin, and if I miss reviews one day, and I tried to be consistent and to do certain amount of kanji, and I would get desperate when I would not be able to come up with a good story for a kanji, and sometimes I spend a lot of time with that. But I did finish, even though it took me 2.5 years. And I had a huge retention rate when I finished. I would say like higher than 95%, because I had put my own effort, and as Heisig suggested, I came up with my own stories for most of the kanji, right? So that was it, and that was a year ago. A year ago from now, I finished RTK1. I want to say, don't give up. If I finished, then you can too. Now, what have I done in this year since I finished? Well, as you can imagine, finishing all the Joyo kanji is a huge relief. You do have the feeling that you have achieved something great in your life, and you indeed have. And you don't need to learn any new kanji unless you want to start directly with RTK3 and the extra 800 kanji, right? But you know that those kanji are supposed to be given in the newspapers, right? And that if you need them, you will also learn them as you start studying Japanese. Now, what most of the community suggests you do once you finish is that you get serious with your Japanese studies, and that you use your high knowledge of kanji as if you were a Chinese person learning Japanese, and start actually learning the language, which was the main motivation to learn all those kanji, right? I must admit, I have not done that. I have not been studying Japanese seriously, which is kind of a shame, of course. But I have my reasons. I mean, I'm not living in Japan, and although I would love to live there, I don't see myself right now in Japan. I don't know when that could be possible. So if I knew 100% that I'm going to go to live to Japan in 3-4 months, I would definitely get with my Japanese studies again. But I don't have a certainty with that, my motivation is not too high and I haven't learned Japanese as I should. Now, I have kept with my Anki reviews, although not as consistent and not as obsessed as during my kanji study times, which means I probably did my kanji Anki reviews maybe once or twice a week. Mostly I would do my reviews when I was in transportation or when I had some dead time. But it's funny because what was an obsession to me before and what was so important to me before, now it's more like, okay, I want to keep it, but I'm not obsessing with it. So I went from one extreme to the other, you could say, although it is important, I believe, that I have kept up with my Anki reviews. And also, during this year is when I started this channel, and I actually wanted to share with the community my enthusiasm with the kanji learning process. And I set up some really high goals in the beginning, which I later realized that they would not be able to be fulfilled, as I explained in my previous video. But it's been good, you know. It's been good starting this channel. It's been good keeping up with the Anki reviews. Wow, I still can't believe it's already been a year since I finished learning the Joyo kanji. No, I haven't started with RTK3 either. To be honest, I'm not too much in a rush to learn non-Joyo kanji. I did start with RTK2. I think Heisig has some interesting methods to learn the onyomi of all the kanji, and some of them can be really effective, especially with the pure groups, but I just haven't gotten myself into it as much as I got into RTK1. And it's true that you don't really need RTK2 if you start reading Japanese, so I also want to try that method, you know, of once I get back into learning Japanese seriously, if RTK2 is as good as it could be, as I hope it is, or if it's even more efficient to actually start reading Japanese and start learning the readings of the kanji as you learn new words and new vocabulary. After all, the objective of RTK1 is to transform you into a Chinese person who's learning Japanese, because you already know the kanji, you already know the alphabet, or better said, the writing system, and so now that you know, you just need to learn how to read the kanji that you already know. Now, I'd like to share with you some of the Anki statistics in my case. Here are some graphs. This is from the last month. You can see over here that I haven't been reviewing Anki every single day, but more like kind of once or twice a week. Here is a graph with my reviews during the whole year, where you can see that I haven't really learned anything new. There is a lot of cram in this place over here, but it's more, that was actually when I recorded my first video and I did all those 50 kanji to kind of show how much I had learned with the kanji, with the Heisig method. But apart from that, it's just been reviews, as you can see. And here you can see the graph since the very beginning. Here's where I learned most kanji in the beginning. The first year of learning kanji, I learned a lot of them, and then the next 1.5 years, I took it a bit slower. And as you can see, the last year, I haven't learned any new kanji, but I did keep up with my reviews. And here you can see that my retention rate dropped from over 95% to about 80%. So yes, not learning Japanese and not being super consistent with my reviews has meant that I've dropped in retention rate. But to be honest, after a year of inactivity in Japanese, still 80% of retention rate, I believe it's very high. So I still testify that the Heisig method is very effective. Now, what happens when I'm reviewing Anki? Well, sometimes, to be honest, I see a keyword and I have no clue what the kanji is supposed to be. I try to think on a story, try to think on the radicals, on the primitives, and nothing comes up. And sometimes that's how it is. It's not very often though. Sometimes I do know 100% that there's a primitive over there. I know that the person primitive is somehow there, but I cannot remember the other primitive, and so I don't really remember the kanji well from the keyword. But it's not a total I'm not totally oblivious to what the kanji is supposed to be. I would say most of the times I do remember the kanji, and I'm able to hit on good in Anki. Sometimes I even remember the story too and the primitives, but what is magical is that I see a keyword, and sometimes just by muscle memory I can actually reproduce the kanji without even knowing the story or the primitive. So Heisig was right. Once you have learned a kanji well, you are able to reproduce it without the help of mnemotechniques, and that's where you actually want to get to, right? I believe if I had been active in my Japanese learning, that many more of these keywords would now be automatically kanjis for me, and even Japanese words. The keywords are supposed to also be forgotten at some point, right? I have mixed keywords with the Japanese words because it does help to differentiate similar keywords, right? It's good to have a Japanese word attached to the keyword in hiragana. Now, the key question to all this, was learning all those kanji worth it? And my answer is absolutely yes. It is worth it. It was worth it, and it will be worth it. Now, I'm an engineer by profession, and maybe that's my way of thinking, but I've also forgotten 95% of what I learned in my college degree. And what I'm working, I'm probably using like 2 or 3% of what I learned in college. And still, I believe all of that was worth it, because if I needed to remember something I learned as an engineer, I would be able to relearn it really fast. And I believe with kanji it's also the same thing. If I were to, in the next following years, like stop with my reviews, stop completely with Japanese, and I wanted to retake it in the future, I believe that having gone through this would help me a lot into remembering it again, right? And I've already gone through this, so only for the experience it's already worth it. But I mean, I still have an 80% of retention rate in kanji, and that is very high. And it's great to see Chinese and Japanese texts and recognize all those friends that you made along the way in the Heisig trip, right? And also, it was a great achievement in my life. It's something I like to say in job interviews, when they say, what's one of your greatest achievements in life? Well, I learned over 2,200 Chinese characters as a Westerner. And especially if you're applying for a job with an Asian company or something like that, that is pretty impressive. That is pretty impressive because even the natives have trouble remembering all those characters, and it shows that you've been disciplined enough to go through it, right? So that's it. 1 year after learning the kanji, I still have the same love for kanji and for Japanese, even though I haven't been motivated enough to study it seriously. But what I mean to say is, don't give up. The day will come when you are done, and the day will come when it's been 1 year since it's done, as it is my case. I wish you all the best, and I hope to produce new videos soon, and to keep on helping the community and inspiring you to complete your journey. This has been Glosu. See you next time. Ciao ne.